this evening's Board of Aldermen meeting to order. If everybody will rise with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. President.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Alderman Davidson.
Present.
Alderman Franklin.
Present.
Alderman Turner.
Present.
Alderman Cheney.
Present.
Alderman Milner.
Present.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Present.
Alderman Reese.
Present.
Alderman Mills. Don't believe he's joined us yet. Mayor Zaring.
Present. We have a quorum. Okay, thank you. Ceremonial matters. First thing on the list here is a proclamation for Local Government Week. And the proclamation reads as follows. This proclamation, Local Government Week, whereas local governments in Missouri make important decisions that affect the lives of all Missourians, and whereas local governments are the level of government closest to the people, and whereas local governments include city councils, county commissions, school boards, among others, and whereas local governments are the ultimate expression of grassroots democracy, and whereas local governments play an essential role in the quality of life in Missouri communities. Now, therefore, I, Mike Zaring, Mayor of Harrisonville, do hereby name July 13th, May 7th through May 13th, 2023 as Local Government Week in Harrisonville, Missouri, and urge all Missourians to join me in recognizing local governments as they serve their communities. There you are, sir. Thank you. All right, next up, we're going to have the introduction of our fire department engineers. If the chief wants to step up.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. Guys, come on in. What I want to do tonight is introduce our fire engineers, right? A fire engineer is distinguished differently than a regular firefighter. What a firefighter engineer does is he or she is responsible for the millions of dollars that Harrisonville has invested in our equipment. They go through all the different, every morning they check everything out, and it's literally millions of dollars. They provide maintenance for the apparatus, firefighting and rescue tools. Along with that, they also participate in their normal fire suppression duties, investigations, EMS duties, just like any regular firefighter. They just have more added to it. They're responsible for the department's training as it relates to driving. As we can see how important that is. An ambulance just rolled over recently. These three individuals will be responsible for all of that type of training also, and pumping the truck and all the equipment and how it's used and stuff. But one of the most important duties that a fire engineer has is leadership. It's the first step in the leadership change for the department. They're kind of, if you put it in law enforcement terms, they're like a corporal. All right, so back in August, we made the argument that this would save Harrisonville money and it's good for morale. Things that we talked about before, opportunities, growth, and it was approved, and we began training at that point. That training took almost a year, right? And so last month, we had 4 people take the test. Out of all the people that tried, 4 people finally got all the qualifications from the state, NFPA, the department, and they took the test and finally passed. And I'm proud to say that we now have fire engineers on the fire department for the first time in Harrisonville's history. Could I get Emily, Jacob, and Katie Bailey? These are your 3 brand new engineers. We also have a 4th individual that passed, Joe Parrish. and he's what they call on the waiting list. So if somebody in this group is promoted or somebody leaves or whatever, then he'll be among this group here. Pin in their badges tonight. We're going to start with Jacob. This is his wife, Mackenzie, who is also a firefighter, works for us. Next was Katie Bailey and Alex Bailey, who's also a firefighter. We're going to try to keep this in the family. Newly married, by the way. And last but not least, Emily. And Chief Midor be. They literally spent day and night on their own time preparing for this position. It was thousands of hours of studying, back and forth to Jeff City, taking tests, you know, just all kinds of stuff. It's really, really quite an accomplishment, and I couldn't be more proud of everybody here. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Captains and other EMS staff, you want to jump in here, we'll do a big group one. Guys? We'll do a big one. Everybody squeeze in. All right, everybody, up here, 1, 2, 3, and one more. Well done, thank you.
Daniel.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. And all of those that supported you while you did that. And Chief, I'm telling you, you can't probably explain enough in the amount of time you have here, the amount that you guys had to go through. Anybody that's ever had to certify, study, and go through all the nerves of testing and passing and all of that, and you guys did that for the past year. It sounds like a lot of hard work that we probably won't get to fully appreciate, but we do. But we do appreciate you all going through that for our city and to give up your time to do that as well. So thank you. If we could make sure everybody's got their cell phone silenced and turned off right now, that'd be great as we move on. We had no public participation requests.
No, sir.
All right. Next up, we are going to approve the minutes for the Board of Aldermen regular meeting, April 17th. Those minutes should be in your packet there. Anybody have any questions, concerns? If not, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Had a motion from Alderman Milner with a second from Alderman Davidson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the Board of Aldermen regular meeting minutes have been approved. Board of Aldermen work session for April 17th.
Make a motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
Alderman Dorhoff with a motion, second from Alderman Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the Board of Aldermen work session minutes have been approved. Agenda items, first item on the agenda tonight is the board voting a pro tem mayor for the position, acting president of the Board of Aldermen. And what we'll do now is take any nominations.
I would like to nominate Alderman Bill Mills for the position of acting president board on the Alderman.
Okay, all right. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, if there's no other nominations, then at that point, we can just vote, yeah. So all in favor of Alderman Bill Mills?
Sandy.
I made the motion.
Yep, so we got a motion from Alderman Franklin. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second from Alderman Reese. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Resolution 2023, or Council Bill 47 is now Resolution 2023-17. Thank you. Next is Council Bill 48.
A resolution of the City of Harrisonville approving the preliminary plat of Burris Ridge 4th Plat, lots 1 through 77, located west of Mechanic Street, State Highway 7, and south of Burris Drive in the City of Harrisonville, Cass County, Missouri.
All right. It's Christine.
Mayor, Alderman, Christina Stanton, Director of Community Development. And I'm going to kind of go over the proposal. The applicant is seeking approval of the proposed preliminary plat of Burris Ridge 4th, plat lots 1 through 77. It's planned to be final platted all at once in one group, not being phased. There's a couple of key issues we're going over. That the original development contained 186 lots total. Some were originally for commercial, some for duplexes. Development started out slowly and has stalled over a period of time and then has picked back up the last several years. It's changed quite a bit over the last few years. There have been several lot line adjustments and a number of lot combinations. All the properties that was previously zoned for commercial or duplex has been rezoned to planned single family or single family. And there's approximately 66 lots that are platted now after all those various combinations. So kind of go back over. So the proposed preliminary plat with the changes that have happened over the years and the proposal, we're looking at about 143 lots, which is 43 lots less than the original preliminary plan. There are currently 46 lots that have issued builder permits within the SmartGov permitting system. And when we did a look at the different lots that were already built on out there, it looks like there were 4 that were permitted in the previous permitting system. So there's 50 lots that have existing buildings or building permits. It's currently we're under the 2018 International Fire Code, and the fire code requires A second point of access be provided when the number of dwelling exceeds 30. There's also code requirements within the municipal code that I'll get into here. The lots have been enlarged to better cater to the housing market. The overall street network is largely the same. There has been some change from the original preliminary plat in the northwest portion of this phase. Cul-de-sacs of Roanoke Drive and Durham Circle that were in the original preliminary plat have been changed and reconfigured. Ladies Lane is also located further east, and access to the north is no longer part of the overall plan. The original preliminary plat contemplated 2 points of access, Burris Drive and a planned access point to the north. The access point to the north should never have been part of the plan without having had some kind of easement, agreement, right-of-way, something recorded in place saying that it would connect. It essentially was a moot point. It didn't have an access. It was kind of halfway planned. The developers never owned or had any control over the property to the north back then or today. Had that easement, right-of-way, agreement, had any of that been put in place, there would have been something to fall back on for that, but without that, it's not. So as I mentioned earlier, municipal code also requires a second point of access. Section 410, 490, J4, there shall be an adequate number of points of ingress to and egress from the subdivision to ensure sound traffic engineering design, smooth traffic flow into and out of all portions of the subdivision based upon the projected traffic on both existing and future streets. Adjacent to the subdivision and the public safety. In determining whether the subdivision provides for an adequate number of points of ingress and egress, all relevant factors shall be considered, including but not limited to the following. The subsection immediately following that, subparagraph 5, talks about residential subdivisions and states, as a general rule, 1 point of ingress to and egress from the subdivision shall be required for each 50 dwelling units in the subdivision. Each required point of ingress to and egress from the subdivision shall be located as to best serve the traffic generated by the subdivision. Now going into some of the pieces from the Fire Code, Section D 107, Appendix D, requires the additional point of access. Developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of dwellings exceeds 30 shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. There are some exceptions listed within staff report, and unless we want to dive into that, I'm going to kind of jump that part for right now. Section D 107.2 deals with remoteness and states where 2 fire apparatus access roads are required, they shall be placed a distance apart equal to not less than 1/2 of the length of the maximum overall diagonal dimension of the property or area to be served, measured in a straight line between accesses. I think originally when they looked at that, they included the detention pond that was dedicated to the city. I would argue against that since it has been dedicated to the city and doesn't serve particularly just that development, even though that is right there at the access point. Not including that would bring it closer to something that could be serviceable, and I think in the vicinity of maybe lot 57 or something that way in that area on the plat. On April 20th, the Planning and Zoning Commission met and listened to staff's recommendation, listened to the applicant. After some discussion and debate, they voted 6-1 to recommend approval of the proposed preliminary plat as proposed. Staff's recommendation is for approval with the following conditions. A second point of access to from the Burris Ridge subdivision shall be provided as required by Section 410-490J of the city's municipal code and Section D 107 of the International Fire Code 2018. A site distance study shall be completed as required by MoDOT. An engineered set of plans shall be submitted calling out the construction of the drive as required by MoDOT. And bonding shall be provided to the state of Missouri in certification of insurance before any work is to be performed on the right-of-way as required by MoDOT. So that hits all the high points from my staff report, but I also wanted to ask the fire chief to come up and talk to some of the concerns, life safety, why those are in the code and the way it is, and kind of address some of those points.
Mostly I can just answer any questions that you might have. The difference that comes up a lot is why one's 50 and one's 30. The 50 from building code is measuring traffic flow. The 30 from the fire code is measuring safety, right? So if something happens in that entrance, or given until they get to that first street, fire, law enforcement issue, anything, a car wreck, anything, we shut down the street, right? You can't go around us. 20% of firefighters that are killed in traffic accidents, right? And so the fire department and the National Fire Protection Association takes that very seriously, right? So we will shut it down. That means if there's a fire for hours, nobody goes to school, nobody goes to work, nobody goes in, nobody goes out. More importantly, no ambulances can go that way. So if you have 150 homes down there, times 3.5, which is the average number of people in a house, you have almost 1,000 people that are in danger of an EMS call, right? I'm not here to decide where a entrance goes. I'm just telling you how important it is from a public safety standpoint that people have the ability to leave that neighborhood if needed, or come into that neighborhood if an emergency arises. And that's why we have a building code of 30. Can I answer any questions?
Yeah, let's open it up to the board. If you have any questions for Christina or Chief, or the developer is actually here in the audience as well. So any questions that you may have for anybody? Yes.
Not a question, actually, a comment. I think law enforcement would be the same as fire. I mean, the same situation could apply in law enforcement as well for the safety of those, the back of the subdivision. So I know you're here to represent fire, but I think law enforcement as well is in the same situation.
So the only way they're getting there is if they go through the yards or whatever the case may be. Now, obviously, we'd make every attempt to get somebody by, right? But it is what it is. If there's hoses laid across and people are fighting fires or whatever, even police officers can't run over it. You know, it's just, you're gonna hurt somebody.
Alderman Franklin, did you have something?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes. Alderman Dorhoff, go ahead.
My question's for Christina. So when was the code enacted for the 50 homes?
The current code in there, I believe, has been in place since 2002, I want to say.
Okay, so
It was in
over
place.
20 years.
Yes.
And the developer, when did he purchase this development? 'Cause I know the subdivision is about 20 years old, right?
Yes.
I can help her out, 2006,
All right, 2006.
Is when you purchased it?
the original.
That was when the original purchase was? Okay, we're talking,
Was it repurchased in the
Yes.
last?
so,
I didn't buy my
Couple of
lot
years?
from them. I didn't buy my lot from them.
So you're the original developer?
No, we were the second.
Okay, and when did you purchase the? 2 years ago? Okay.
Yeah, the county's record said November 22nd, 2021.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I had the chance to drive through there and a couple times, and cars are parked on both sides of the street. There's no way a fire truck can get through there with only having one access point.
okay. Alderman Miller?
Well, I guess my question would be to the developers. Why, knowing what the codes were, was in your final plat or in your proposed plat, why was there not a road construction piece put in?
And if
The
you could,
second access?
if you could step up to the mic, please. What's that?
And give name and address.
Yeah, and give your name and address. If you could come up to the mic. Yeah. And give your name and address, please. Thank you.
I'm part of Burris Ridge, work out there. We bought that, Councilman, I mean, we bought that on good faith. the city had approved that in 2006 for 186 homes, just the way it was. And we increased the size of the homes to 146. So we reduced them by about 40 homes, 46 lots. And we purchased in good faith, because the city had already approved that.
Can I make a clarification on that?
What's that?
When you say the city approved it,
Preliminary plat?
if you don't have final plat though, that's not final approval.
No, we did. We bought, if it was preliminary platted, approved.
I know, but preliminary plats don't last for the end of time. Preliminary plats are always subject to change based upon the code,
Okay.
because what a resolution is on a preliminary, what the city giveth, the city can taketh away. But once it's finally plat, the city cannot change a final plat.
Okay.
But a preliminary plat, as known in code and state law, is bound in preliminary plats is whatever the code of the city is. So the final plat is what dictates what is the final approval of a city.
Okay.
Just want to clarify that.
Sure. The original first phase that was final approved had 45 homes, 15 more than what fire set is required, but they approved it. There was a second access that was brought up at the last meeting, planning and zoning meeting, and Kevin Wood talked about the access going north through Hunter and all the way to the north. And we didn't think even then that it would be a big deal, because city staff signed off March 22nd, giving that access up, indicating to us that it wasn't important. There was a road that, even though there was no easement agreements, staff said, yeah, sure, it's fine. And signed off and let us sell that. And it's just, it's hard for us to see where the city says, okay, yeah, it's fine, sell that. We're fine with it, they sign off. And then to come here tonight and say, oh no, we need a second entrance. This replatting of this fourth and final phase was on their desk when they signed off. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're going off of.
But there wasn't a road to the north. So I don't know how we could count that as a road.
Well, that was brought up at planning and zoning. It was Kevin's recollection that that's why it was approved the way it was.
Yeah, and if I remember right from that board with Kevin, what he was saying was that road was initially on, it was actually initially, I believe, on the original plat, so it was assumed that that's why they had approved it back then, was that that's where that road was gonna go. So that's why they took it on, that's how it was gonna go. But then later on, that came out to be, and again, if it's city's fault, builder's fault, whatever it is, in that there really wasn't, they didn't own that land to be able to do that in the first place, which was the problem. And that's what Kevin was explaining on the zoning board there, is that originally it was there, but somehow that slipped through the cracks that it wasn't actually owned or developed that way. So he was saying that, he was basically kind of saying that's how that got approved at that point. Yes, Alderman Dorhoff.
I'm trying to remember, I was at the P&Z meeting. Is there still a pending case with the MoDOT about a second access that's just south of the current access onto 7? I thought that was under review with MoDOT for that second.
Not by us, it's not.
So MoDOT doesn't have a,
They haven't agreed to anything. And they probably won't, just because of the steepness of the grade going up there. And it's gonna be about a $700,000 hit to try to put that in there. But there's no guarantee that we would ever have that.
Was that the one that was connecting to 7, or was that steep hill connecting to the park in the back?
It is to 7.
Okay.
7 highway.
Alderman Franklin, did you have something?
Yes, when you go into Morris and you go all the way down, okay, to Norfolk, okay, the street only goes so far to the north, and then it goes all the way down to Richardson.
Yes.
Richardson is a circle drive, and then it starts to come back east. If I'm not mistaken, if I got my directions right. So east, and then it stops. Hunter Road is the same way. When you go into Burris, off to the left, there's Hunter's Road. That goes down just so far. So all the houses on the north, I did not see any where a road was started and, you know, not completed. So we're talking about somehow these roads would go to the south and then end up on
Burris?
7 Highway? And that would be the second
Well,
entrance or exit?
Wait,
that's what staff is talking about. But the way we have it set up now, these next 77 lots, when Richmond comes around, that will curve up and go back up into Hunter.
Oh, I see, okay.
So you're talking a very short distance from
Yeah.
7 Highway to Hunter Drive. There's, you know, all those folks back in there aren't going to have just one way in and one way out. They can get back up on Burris. They don't have to drive down Norfolk Drive and have to go through all of that to get down there. It's currently set up that way, and I feel by the way we're doing this, it's gonna be safer for all the neighbors by having another road going up there to land onto Burris Drive.
Right. But I would think that there would need to be an access to 7 Highway. I mean, I would, for that area, for the size of that subdivision and that amount of houses. Sorry to disagree,
The
but I
state,
think it
MoDOT
needs to go.
is, from what we've been told and looked into, MoDOT's not gonna approve it. They didn't approve it the first time. They were asked the first time and they denied it. And going back to Mr. Ratcliffe's, what he talks about the preliminary plat, if that is truly the case, a preliminary plat probably shouldn't have been given for the whole thing. If it was that big of a,
I can't speak for people 20 years ago. I'm just telling you what the law is. And I think it's incorrect. If Christina isn't, MoDOT said that given some kind of preliminary to staff that they weren't opposed to it. Was it you, Carl, that got something from them?
Staff has been in discussion with MoDOT staff about the possibility of getting a second entrance onto 7 Highway, about the possibility. They have not denied it already.
Right. It's not been denied.
approved.
No, they're looking into it.
Go ahead, Alderman.
So I'm trying to understand, initially, when you're saying that this was approved, when you come into Burris and go to the west, to the very end, and it's a T basically, to the right, if you go right, there's some homes down that way, dead ends, okay? And is that the second entrance that they were initially discussing?
No.
That would connect with the ranch, because the ranch has a stub the same, about the same area, that goes north, at the
No,
back,
and
at
we
the back
had,
of the ranch.
We had sold that as well, and staff signed off on that as well, letting us sell that. And
But that's where it was initially.
No, it was on Hunter is what, because that originally, that curved around. There was a street to go on the north side of Burris Drive,
Okay,
and we have sold that property off. We're not gonna develop on that side. It's not suitable for developing. So everything to the north of Burris is built, with the exception of 2 homes on Hunter.
but where initially, when it was approved, that second entrance to the north, that you said it went through private property, where was it gonna connect to?
To their farm?
Okay, so if it was gonna go through their farm, what was it gonna connect to?
It would be to the ranch.
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
sorry,
asking.
I thought you were talking about Norfolk.
No, so you're talking about, so the two stubs that stop basically, those would have been connected if the easement had been approved.
It would have actually been the one on Hunter and not Norfolk,
Okay,
because that Norfolk would have curved around. Norfolk was never intended to go through,
okay,
and it'll show that on the original plat.
yeah. Looking at that.
So the original developer that submitted us, you don't have those in your packet here tonight. They had it at the zoning board. There was a stub there that showed the possibility of a road going out that way. Now, it was just like any road that is planned in the future, well in the future. It's just showing that that's a possibility, that that's where the second entrance exit could be at. That's what I believe you're saying. You
Yes.
sold that part of it off, and the original, like I said, the original approval of that original plat was based upon the people that voted on that saw that, yeah, there
There was
is
gonna be a second
second
entrance.
entrance there.
Right.
But there was never any type of, I don't believe the city had any type of proof that they owned the land or easement or any of that type of stuff to be able to do that. But the idea is that there is a possibility for another
Right.
exit entrance. So now all of that's kind of disappeared at this point and where we're at now.
And to add to that, if it was a preliminary plat, you wouldn't need those agreements until you got to the final
The
plat.
final plat.
Because if they approve the preliminary based upon that, then that would mean that the developer, at that first developer, would have had to come with proof of those easements to be able to build it to get the final plat.
To get that second entrance that they initially had indicated they were going to have.
Correct.
So the preliminary is a rough draft, just showing everything. And
Right.
then they have to get all the easements and ownership, everything, before they come back with the final.
Right.
Right.
Yes, Alderman.
From the P and Z meeting, there was discussion about possibly connecting it to the park. Is that a possibility?
They
Um,
sold the land.
Possibly going into the park?
Yeah, I know that was a discussion that was at the P and Z meeting.
Yeah, that probably would be very difficult to accomplish. If I could, just a couple things. I was at the P and Z meeting. These gentlemen have asked me to kind of help them try to explain where they're coming from and what's going on here. I would like to say that preliminary plats are about as important of a thing that there is in developing. Whether they're only good for 2 years or not, they set the stage for everything when you're developing a subdivision. A preliminary plat is that important. Now, this preliminary plat was approved. I've done a lot of research and a lot of thinking, trying to figure out how this happened. A lot of discussion has taken place, trying to figure out how that original preliminary plat was approved. Now, development code, the 50 home deal, it was there. So obviously that didn't play in very heavily. Harrisonville adopted the IFC, International Fire Code, in 2003. International Fire Code wasn't even created until 2000. 2000, that 30 home deal was in there. Didn't seem to make a difference to the city of Harrisonville. They approved that preliminary plat. Now, I think it's fairly safe to say that we would not even be discussing this evening if it wasn't for the recession of 08 and 09. So the only thing that has really changed in this whole picture is the fact that there was an economic recession, which made that, well, not just that subdivision, but it stagnated everything. Had that recession not have happened, this subdivision would have been built out before 2010 probably. and we would not be having this discussion. Now, back then, the city, when they were looking at doing development reviews, take a look at, let's talk about Eastern Hills. There's 90 lots over there with one way in. There's no easement, there's no written recorded agreement that says that the road headed west that was stubbed out of Eastern Hills will ever connect with anything. Anybody could put a road stub in and say, oh yeah, in the future. Well, I got news for you. There's 4 subdivisions in this town that have these stubs that 20 years later, nothing has been done with them. So we've got these access issues that Chief is worried about all over town. And it's been that way for 20 years. So how is a developer who's trying to do their due diligence, they have to go off of something. So they look, they go as far back as they can. Was there ever a approved preliminary plat? Well, yeah, there was. The reason that they only phased for phase 1 to start was because they were worried about the recession. They knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming. So they did that subdivision in phases. Had the recession not been on the horizon, the subdivision would have been built out already and you'd have one entrance. So I'm thinking, okay, how did they ever get to this point? Because you guys all know me, I'm a code guy, you know. And I'm thinking, how did this ever happen? What mitigating circumstances? Because I don't care if it's development code, municipal code, building code, fire code, it doesn't matter. Code, letter of code is one thing, letter of law is one thing. But you have to be able to have the experience and confidence to interpret and decide how you're gonna help things happen without just reading paragraphs out of a book. Because there is no way to write code that will cover every situation and scenario that you're gonna run across in life. It just doesn't happen. And you don't write code to cover disasters either. You write code as a general guideline for people like Christina or myself or any of you as the P&Z Commission to use to help you interpret intent and come up with solutions. Now, I thought to myself, why is Burris Drive wider than it needed to be? The only thing I can come up with is that was one of the mitigating factors they used to approve that preliminary plat and the first phase final plat. Burris Drive is 36 feet wide of pavement plus roll-off curb. The right-of-way is 60 feet. That runs for 700 feet. When you get to the point where that chokes back down to a regular size street, 26 feet wide, 50 feet of right-of-way, now you have 2 ways in and out of the balance of that subdivision. There's less than 30 homes in that first 700 feet. Again, these are the only things I can think of as to how they got to a point where they approved all of this. Now, there were 2 people, I believe, on the P&Z Commission. We went over this at the P&Z meeting for over an hour and a half. Every little thing about it. They finally came to the conclusion, and I'm gonna just touch real quick. Are we limited on time, Mr. Ratliff?
Nope, we're good.
There.
Yep, let's hear it.
I'll just touch on a few things. I don't know if the minutes are out yet from the P&Z meeting. Have you guys seen the minutes of the P&Z meeting? Okay, some of the things we touched base on. And these are important things that I've lived my whole life thinking about. Now, prior city decisions, and for the staff that work for jurisdictions, inherited determinations are a big thing. And you don't get all these do-overs. It's like I tell everybody that I've ever been involved with doing plan review, you get one shot at it. So you better be right, or you live with what you got. Now in building code, we've got something called the existing building code. So we don't make existing stuff comply with today's stuff. But the fact of the matter is, nothing's changed code-wise. The 30 rule, that was in the fire code they had when they adopted it in 2003. The 50 home deal, which I can't for the life of me think of why those two numbers don't match.
I totally agree.
Well, you explained the difference between them, but you didn't explain why they don't match. Why wouldn't they match them? Why would they say in development code, you could do 50. Fire code says you can do 30. We don't really care. We're going with 50. Why wouldn't they just go 30?
What were you gonna say on that, Chief? Were you gonna explain that a little bit better?
There's some insinuations going on for the fire department. I explained, I thought very clearly, there was no questions, that one is measuring traffic and convenience, the other is measuring, safety.
Life.
Right? That's just, the two entities don't meet into a room and talk about, what are you gonna do? Okay, we're gonna do this, let's get together and come up with a number. That's just not how it works. And Mr.
Well,
Arthur knows
it
that.
should, because what you do when that
and as it
happens,
relates-
you
as it
create
relates-
your own conflict.
Okay, so Chief, so as it relates to, go ahead.
As it relates to codes and why the fire department didn't have anything to do with it 20 years ago, I don't know, but the fire department, until I got here, wasn't a significant part of the code's development. So why, I don't know, I didn't get here till June, right? What I can tell you today is if a business changes hands or gets a different license, they are required to follow the new code. That's how we comply. We don't go in and make somebody that's already got a business comply with new requirements. But if they change ownership, if they buy it, if they lose their license for whatever reason, and they get it back, they must comply with the codes of today. That's just how it works. And so I just wanted to make that perfectly clear.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, Chris, go ahead. Yep.
So we talked a lot about inherited determinations, and we talked a lot about the actual existing conditions. Wider Burris Drive for 700 feet. We talked a lot about travel access and operational access, the two different types of access that responders need. We talked a lot about the recession. We talked some about access impairment, the potential for access impairment, and how to possibly mitigate that. Again, a wider road. My personal feeling was that, and I brought this up at the P&Z meeting, that Burris Drive, the first 700 feet, should have been signed as fire lane on both sides. All the other streets in Burris Ridge should be signed no parking fire lane on one side. That's something that can be done, and it's another mitigation effort. So Burris Drive is basically, that first 700 feet, it's built as a collector. It's wide enough to be a collector. I think they did that on purpose back then. Why else would they have done it? They'd have continued Burris Drive out to 7 with a 50-foot right-of-way. I believe that all the other streets are local classification. Burris Drive, that 700 feet, is a collector class, and it connects to an arterial road, which is 7 Highway. Now, the city's own municipal code calls for access points on major streets, arterial streets, to be 1,300 feet apart. MoDOT's probably got a rule between how close you can have accesses off of their highways. If you look at a topo map or go out there and shoot elevations, you're gonna find that there's a pretty good elevation problem at the south end of the subdivision off 7 Highway. There's 8 feet or more of elevation difference at a high point down on the south end. My guess is that MoDOT denied a second entrance because of sightline distance. Sightline distance could be anywhere between 300 and 500 feet on that stretch of road. Harry Davidson told me that's 45 mile an hour, 7 highway speed limit. So just because somebody on the phone at MoDOT says that, well, we'll be glad to reconsider or look at a drawing, that doesn't mean that they're signing up to give a second access point. If it was in fact a sight distance problem is why they denied it, and you think, okay, well, what are the other reasons why they may have denied this second access? I can't come up with any other than a sight distance problem. And if that's the case, they're gonna deny it again. Sure, they'll take you could apply for anything.
Hey, Chris,
And
I'm
they'll
gonna ask
deny
you,
it again if
I'm gonna
that's-
ask you, can you wrap it up in about 3 minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. So I want more questions, if we have more questions, I want to be able to.
The other major thing we talked a lot about was prescriptive versus performance-based compliance with codes. Prescriptive, the code says you'll tie your shoe right now, you do it. Performance-based, you tied your shoe before you came in the door. So there's 2 different ways to meet compliance, prescriptive and performance. And I believe that the city at the time felt that they were meeting compliance in a performance-based fashion. And that's why my belief is that the city should stand by what they previously decided as far as approving a preliminary plat. This preliminary plat has less roofs in it. Again, that's the only thing that's changed other than the fact that there was a recession. That's all I got.
Awesome, thank you, sir. All right, any further questions?
Can I add to it?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think what you have tonight is because you got the code and you got the preliminaries before, we can go back however many years. I know in other communities that I've worked for, preliminary plans were eliminated during the recession because the code changes and the cities did not want to deal with streets that were cut off and messes that you see today. Planning and zoning makes recommendations to you, but you are the final say, just like with every other board that make recommendations to you. I think what Mr. Arthur said is very key. You don't get to do do-overs. And because you don't get to do do-overs, whatever you make decisions based on tonight, you can't make it because one development did it over there and another development did it over there. You can't make decisions based on other bad decisions that were made in the past. You need to make it based upon the code that you have today, the vision that you have today, and the points that you want to make done. If a building burns down in this community, or a house would burn down, God forbid, they would have to build it based on today's code. If the house was built 20 years ago, they could not use the code of 20 years ago to build their house today. They would have to build it based upon the code that is today. And to me, the code is pretty clear on what the code is. We have in this community opportunity for people to go to your variance boards, and they have to prove hardship. The number one thing they're told in those hardship on variances is a variance cannot be granted based upon cost. Meaning, a person says, well, they just can't afford it. You cannot get a variance. They have to prove some type of hardship in the point of that variance. Rather, we have smaller roads with, in our alleys, and someone wants to put on a deck, and based on the setbacks that the current code is, it would be impossible to put it in, but based on the variance and based on the width and the distance, it would be allowed to do, and that would be able to be considered. So I agree with Mr. Arthur. You don't get to do do-overs, and so you need to make sure that we're following our code. We'll work with the developer in any way possible to help them with the entrances that they need to find, if you so choose to do that, like we work with everybody that wants to do and to build in this community.
You have, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alderman Turner.
So, Mr. Arthur made a good point earlier. I mean, one code says 50 and then the fire code says 30. I mean, if we're gonna do it, we need to have a standard
It was
number.
explained.
Yeah, Chief explained that.
It's
yeah.
explained, but, so, what is it, 30 or 50?
It's both.
It's both.
One's for safety and
One's for traffic counts.
Which one?
Correct.
One's
Oh,
for
my.
traffic, one's for safety.
One for
Right,
safety.
so,
If Carl's dealing with something, he's gonna deal with 50, because he cares more about traffic, because he's in public works.
right.
Rusty cares more about 30 because it's a fire safety issue.
In the public safety world, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
In the
Chief.
public safety world, we always lean toward the most restrictive.
Right, I understand that, but, I mean, so, well, if I want 50, I go and talk to Carl. If I want 30, I go talk to you. I mean, it should be the same number. I mean, you should have a common number, regardless of what it's for. I mean, I'm just saying that.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else?
Yes.
Alderman, oh, yeah, Alderman Miller.
20 years ago is a long time. It was started there, and I can tell you, from the time that the Burris Ridge was started and the time the ranch was started, there was never an intent for those stubs to ever meet up. Unless, as now, we have sold that property and maybe the new property owner, but considering my mother-in-law owned it before we did, there was never a possibility of that. I will be the first to tell you, the more roofs in this town that we get, the happier we will all be. I guarantee you, not one person up here can say that they wouldn't be happy about that. So as far as the division going forward, absolutely. However, we have staff in place to provide us with guidance, and if we don't follow our own ordinances and codes, no matter what happened 20 years ago, we are setting them up to fail, and I mean, we just can't. That's not why we're here. I would really like to see, my personal opinion, I would like to see this explored about MoDOT. If MoDOT absolutely gives us a no, then it's over, said and done, and there's nothing to do about it. But in my own personal opinion, because of the safety issue, I feel like we have to explore that.
Okay. Alderman Davidson.
You know, precedent is, is there. A lot of times we utilize that for decisions that we make. However, using precedent, we have to remember that we have to look at how it's going to affect us. Therefore, if we've made decisions in the past that was a bad decision, that doesn't mean we continue to make that bad decision. We've made some bad decisions from this podium, but that doesn't mean we continue to make those bad decisions if we see that it was a bad decision. And when it comes to public safety, we have no choice to at least explore, as Alderman Milner said, to at least explore to see where we can go from this. It becomes a public safety issue. Whether it's 30 or 50, it makes no difference to me. Still, it's a public safety issue, and it's an ordinance. So I think we need to remember that when we make this decision tonight.
Okay. No other questions? All right. If there's no more discussion, then this is a resolution. I will entertain a motion.
And
the way it stands, the resolution does have, if we pass the resolution, it does have the requirement for the second entrance, the way I read it. Is that not correct in the staff recommendation?
That's correct. Section 3 of the resolution on packet page 34 says that the approval of the preliminary plat is contingent upon compliance with the zoning and subdivision regulations. Those are included in Ms. Stanton's report and would be made part of that resolution, the requirements.
So then approving the resolution would be conditioned to staff's recommendations.
Yes.
Everyone understand that? So if you approve it to staff's recommendations, then that would require the second entrance.
Okay.
What if MoDOT declines to approve?
It would come back to you all.
So that's the way, excuse me, if I'm, because he brings up a good point.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, in what I was talking about, you know, I want to at least explore that option. I think Alderman Milner the same way. I mean, if you get shut down, there's nothing else we can do.
Right.
Obviously, we want to continue to see the city grow. And we would have to make another decision. So if we make this decision tonight, MoDOT comes back and says, absolutely not, they cannot do that entrance anywhere, then it would come back to us and we would be able to revisit this.
Yeah, I don't know the exact procedure, but yes, this board would have a chance to review again, to be brought forward again, and then remove one or more of the conditions that you've previously introduced with this resolution.
And also, let me clarify, that would also mean, say the developer came up with something other than the MoDOT issue, another exit or entrance out of there, they could bring that back as well, correct?
Right.
I don't know exactly what board it would go to first, but I'm saying ultimately, yes, the decision would come back to you all. Whether it went to the BZA first and then you all, I can't say right now. P&Z first, before you all, I can't say. But eventually, yes, it would come back to you for this question again.
And to add on that, because once you all do that, we as staff can't just say, oh, they were denied and move it forward from that. We have to bring it back to you all to remove that stipulation.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Does everybody understand that? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Say one more thing. You know, we were just here a year ago for this third plat that we put in, and we were at 50 homes at that point. And the Board of Aldermen approved 15 more, so we're platted for 65 now. And it's sometimes hard for us to understand why the 50-home rule wasn't followed.
Okay, I don't know as you're adding to the motion right now that's at hand right now. So do you have anything additional to add to that hasn't already been addressed?
Yeah, one thing, just one other thing I wanted to say before Chris came up. You know, when we started there were 18 homes completed as of 9/8/21. And 19 months later, we're at 52. And I went back and looked, and I said this at the P&Z meeting, that, you know, the 34 homes that have gone in, 82% are homeowners from out of town that are moving to the community. So, you know, we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to be good stewards of the city. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so does everybody understand what we're voting on here?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, it is a resolution. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution, obviously with the staff recommendations, the conditions in the staff recommendations.
All right. Have a motion from Alderman Davidson. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, a second from Alderman Franklin. Roll call, please.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff,
Aye.
Alderman Franklin,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Davidson,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Cheney,
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Council Bill 48 will now become 2023-18, Resolution 2023-18. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I was just going to say, hey, thanks to everybody, staff, everybody, developers. I know there was a lot of discussion, a lot of time spent on this. I appreciate everybody's time, making sure that the board has the information they need to be able to make a decision. So thank you all very much on that. Okay, Council Bill 49.
An ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, amending various sections of the City of Harrisonville's municipal code to remove specific fee, fine, and penalty amounts.
All right.
Change practice.
Yeah.
I said
That's
she's
a
gonna
big-
change practice.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of discuss things for the ordinance and the resolution proceeding. So the proposal related to the ordinance is removing the specific fees listed within the municipal code. The resolution piece is going to be creating the comprehensive schedule of fees where all the fees that were coming out of code are being put into that schedule. So with that, there are a couple things I wanted to bring up. It was brought to staff's attention earlier today that fee amounts were left in sections 100.210 and 505.030E, and staff is proposing removing the fee from the latter as it's already listed in the comprehensive schedule fees. We just missed redlining that piece in that paragraph. However, the fees remaining in section 100.210 were left there on purpose because it was greatly confusing trying to figure out a way to pull that out and not mess up the intent of that paragraph. Because there's a fee referenced and then it says except for and it has additional fees. So the way that it's worded, I think, would be extremely difficult to capture that. Some fees are being proposed to be changed as outlined in staff's reports and attachments. And if you want to go into those specific fees, we can as part of the discussion. The key issues, though, right now is that the current comprehensive fee schedule does not contain all the fees. Fees, fines, and penalties are currently listed within the municipal code. However, some of those haven't been updated since 1995. Putting these into one fee schedule will make it much easier to review on a yearly or even biannual basis and figure out if there are things that need to be updated. And this is also a best practice by taking the fees out of code that really shouldn't be in there and having them into a fee schedule so that they can be reviewed regularly, and also having everything all in one place makes it easy for staff, potential applicants, citizens, anybody to be able to find what the fees are. So our recommendation is for approval of the requested code changes and the creation of the comprehensive schedule of fees.
Questions? This was brought to you in the work session. Yes.
Oh, it's me.
Oh.
I wanted to ask you if I could. I just want to give Christina an amount of reading that she did to go through this code to find all of this is phenomenal. So just want to give her a kudos in front of the board here. It was a major undertaking that she did to go through all this. So I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, this is an ordinance.
I make a motion we suspend the rules and move Council Bill 49 to second reading.
All right, we have a motion from Alderman Turner with a second from Alderman Milner to take this to a second reading. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cheney.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Davidson.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
An ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, amending various sections of the City of Harrisonville's municipal code to remove the specific fee, fine, and penalty amounts.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Davidson.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Cheney.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Okay, Council Bill 49 is now ordinance 3650. Council Bill 50.
A resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, approving the comprehensive schedule of fees for the City of Harrisonville, Missouri.
All right. Christine again.
The presentation I did was just very brief and kind of covered both of them. But again, there are some fees that are changed, and those are outlined in the report, and I did have attachments related to those. So if you want to get into those specific fees from planning, building permit side, electric fees, and the one under police, I'm happy to do that. If not,
All right.
everything else
Any
is good.
questions? Any questions on this?
No, I guess my only thought would be, where did you, when you came up with the amounts now, where did you come to your basis for your amounts?
With the amounts, one of the things we looked at is notice fees with the planning piece of it, because right now we're covering that in our budget. Most municipalities don't do that. They pass that on to the applicant. So we looked at notice fees for like the last year and did an average to try to figure out what that should be. And then also comparing with the other communities within Cass County and surrounding counties, trying to look and see where they were, wanting to be in the same range. We didn't want to be higher. We didn't want to be way at the bottom. Somewhere in the middle is usually a sweet spot, which is kind of similar with the building codes, the building permit fee that was proposed. John brought me 3 different options. And some of them I'm like, well, that'd be great, but that puts us way too high. That put us way too high from the other communities, and I don't want to, shoot us in the foot
Right.
and make us more expensive so that we're not developable. So I picked one of the options that stair steps us from where we're at now, but still keeps us competitive with our neighbors.
So when was the last time we had a fee raise?
I think 2020 was the last time that the building permit fees were reviewed.
So we've had quite a bit of inflation in the last.
Any other questions? All right, this is a resolution.
Make a motion to approve?
All right. Got a motion from Alderman Dorhoff,
I second.
second from Alderman Franklin. Roll call, please.
Alderman Franklin,
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Cheney,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Davidson,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Okay, Council Bill 50 is now Resolution 2023-19. Alderman and committee reports. We'll start with Alderman Milner.
I have nothing this evening.
Okay, Alderman Reese.
I don't have a lot. I want to thank Christina again, because the work that she's gone through for us to pick at and look at and decide whether she's right or wrong, and having much faith in her, I just think she does an admirable job, and I think that she needs to be commended for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Dorhoff.
I'm on the P&Z board as a liaison. I don't have anything more to add than what was discussed this evening. On another side note, I have to express my disappointment at what happened at prom the other night, and wish a speedy recovery to Officer Ramsey that was assaulted that night. And that's all I've got to say.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good choice.
Alderman Turner.
Yeah.
Just, this is also, I believe it's National Teachers Week. So, I mean, teachers, they have a rough job.
Yes.
And they don't get congratulated for what they do and what they put up with. But I want to thank all of our teachers and for the job they do.
Thanks, sir. Alderman Davidson.
I also want to wish Scott Ramsey a speedy recovery. Law enforcement has a tough job, and to see this happen to not only law enforcement but also another administrator at the school, I'm very hopeful that the judicial system will consider strongly consider addressing this individual as an adult. If he, no, I just strongly encourage that that happen, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Alderman Franklin?
Okay, reporting on Parks and Rec, disc golf in Lawrence Park. All 18 holes have been laid out, and some of the basket sleeves have been installed in the ground, so work continues on there. Doing good. The HVAC out at the community center is in the process of being repaired, and we are waiting on the programming panels, which should help complete that job. The outdoor pool, if you've been through the park, they have been out there working. Some of the side walls had, some of the paint was chipping already, so they have been out there and doing their process to get that repainted. The blue trim up at the top of the pool all the way around has also been repainted. It looks much brighter, much cleaner effect. So the Bright Futures fundraiser by Kurzweil's, that has been rescheduled. For those of you that don't know, it's going to be taking place on Saturday, June 10th. They are expanding, not just burgers, but it's going to be beef, pork, and chicken as well. Kurzweil's and Vanessa Hargrave has got links on their website, their Facebook pages that can help you, take you there and show you what needs to be done. And then our Has Friends, the support group for the shelter, we thank Obi Carl, a huge thank you to him for this weekend. We got to utilize the doggy spa wash at his car wash, and we had a really good turnout. We had a lot of people there, sat there and washed their dogs and got their nails trimmed and came out looking pretty spiffy. Him being one of them.
Him or his dog?
Well, both.
Glad you got your nails done, Obi.
But anyway, so we had a good crowd, we had a good turnout. We are going to be doing that again this coming weekend as well. So, anyway, and I wanted to reiterate to Christina for all the hard work that you do. I can't imagine what you all have to read and go through and try and understand, and then to help us, to make us understand. So we thank you and appreciate that. I also wanted to say that in lieu of the discussion tonight with Burris Ridge, I believe this is coming up too, will be for the Harrisonville Villas, will it not? Did we not, a couple of years ago, give them 2 years for that construction
Road to be
company to
completed.
come around and,
That road got done.
oh, it did?
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, well, there you go. News to me. I was out there and I didn't see it. I saw the one that's just the dead end, but I didn't see it.
That's part of, that was what the board required, is it go down to that
Oh, okay.
edge, to
Okay.
where it is.
Well, excuse me. And that will be all.
Thank you, ma'am. Alderman Cheney?
I'd just like to thank you for your hard work, the staff, everybody involved in the city. Thank you for what you do. I also would like to express my disgust with the young man who assaulted Officer Ramsey. Very unfortunate event at what should have been a very decent time for our students. Nothing else really. This Sunday, May 7th, the Cass County Elks Lodge will be holding a carnival for children. So if anybody's got kids, it's usually a good time, and usually there's a carriage ride for the kids. So it's free food, free prizes. Ask the community to come out and support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Alderman Mills.
Yes, I wasn't at the last meeting, so congratulations to the election results and everybody back from there. Special shout out to Your Honor, sir, on becoming our next mayor and the appointment of Mr. Cheney. I know the TDD did their documents last week, and those all got signed, so that ought to move forward. And I believe we're getting a bond report in the work session later tonight, so I look forward to that. the creeks don't rise, I'll see y'all at the retreat next week. I'll be back. And I guess that's about it.
Awesome, thank you, sir. And congratulations to you as well. All right, questions from the media? What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get the city administrator first. I'm trying to get ahead here.
I might head you off with the pass. Yes, BOA, the retreat, the 10th, 6 o'clock, community center. Spring wide cleanup on the 13th and the 20th of this month. The Ash Street Culvert and Town Creek Bridge and Channel Improvements RFP project kickoff meeting is tomorrow. And then the South Commercial Street Extension Project, city staff received 7 proposals that is under review right now. So we're happy to get that many proposals. The spring drop-off event, the staff said it was a little down in comparison to the previous year. So our hope is it's because there's less brush for them to be hauling in. Then CWSS, a lot of you don't know, they do the inspections of the grease traps. There are 69 grease traps that they have to inspect across the city. It's a very disgusting thing they have to do in their job. They say it's the worst thing they have to do in their job. And of those 69, 66 passed. So that lets you know that we're checking those things, but those that don't pass are having to bring it up to standard on the passing, because as you know, grease in our system causes a lot of issues for us. Same with the fire inspections. The fire department's been after those to get those done. 75% of the businesses have gotten completed. And a lot of it, from what the fire marshal said, has just been more working with people, talking with people about what needs to be done. The drug take back took in 144.5 pounds, so that's a good thing. And then they also have 5 applications to award 3 of those $1,200 scholarships for the Marlett Work Sumner scholarships. And then we recently received building permits for Love's truck wash demo and rebuild, ACCI building addition, and then the CCMC dietary expansion, which is pretty good size expansion on that. We are also informed that the Warner property that we have in the industrial area was selected by Missouri Partnership as the top 10 locations in the state of Missouri. So that's a good thing to have for us being able to work with them on the marketing of that. Congratulations to our finance staff for getting the GFOA budget award. So your 2023 budget was certified as for an award. And then, and lastly, as everyone else pointed out, our prayers for a speedy recovery for Officer Ramsey. Not that.
Thank you, sir. All right, now questions from the media. Nothing from the media? Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here.
I answered them all for him.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and I would just like to reiterate what everybody's been saying here again. You know, tragic event, high school, should have been a good time for everybody. And unfortunately, we just have members in our society that tend to do those bad things. Hats off to the police department. You guys go through this every day. You put yourselves in harm's way. You're there for the safety of the city, and oftentimes you give those citizens that attack you, they have the advantage because of your hearts and your service to people. And oftentimes you get taken advantage of for that. So again, speedy recovery, Officer Ramsey. Staff, great job again on the award, finance award, all of that. Can't again ever say enough about the staff. Chief, great job. You know, we didn't say what a great job you did up there, but that's a reflection of your leadership out there. So, you know. So really appreciate that. I will take a motion to adjourn from regular session.
Make a motion to adjourn?
All right. We got a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Milner. All in favor?
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, Alderman Reese, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
All in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.